All right, so let's go over a solution to the sun sky exercise. This is just my solution, my version. Like I said in the initial video where I introduced the problem, there's not just one way of doing this. What's really more important is that you have two of these animations going at once, something that's relatively like a sun and something that's relatively like the sky. So we'll start off by implementing the sky animation. Here's the little helper chart that I made. So we have the 6 different frames that we care about, the 6 percentage values, and corresponding background colors. So we want to go from dark blue to pink to blue to blue to pink to dark blue. So the colors themselves aren't that important. I'll start off with just black, pink, and blue, and then I'll go put the appropriate hexadecimal codes if you care to see what colors I used. So let's do that now. Here I have the starter code. The first thing I can do is define my animation. And let's call this, actually what I'll do is make this bigger. The only problem with that is that it will cut off part of the sky and the grass to the right. So it makes everything bigger, but it also impacts the trajectory of our sun, which we'll see in a moment. But for now, I'm going to have a bigger font, and we'll do keyframes. We need a name. I'll just call this cycle sky colors, whatever you want to call it. And we'll add our values. So we have our 0%. We'll do background color is, let's do black. And then we have our next one, 10%. Background color was pink. And then I'm just going to copy those, but change this to be 90. We want to go back to pink. And then at 100, we want to be back to black. Then in the middle, we have 30 and 70 that we want to be blue. And you might be wondering, why do we need to say that twice? Why not just say 50% we want it to be blue? And the answer has to do with how the actual transition from pink to blue occurs. So if I didn't have these two instances, if I only changed the color to blue one time halfway through, sunrise, or the, let's call it golden hour, between pink and blue would take a long time until it gets to halfway, and then it would not stay blue at all. It would be pure blue for one moment, and then it would start transitioning back to pink. But in reality, the sky is blue for a long time in the day. There's only a short moment where it goes from pink or yellow or whatever color the sky is at sunrise until it turns full blue. So that's why I did it, but I'll show you. If we put in 50% and I just make background color blue, then of course we now need to get this running, but we have it defined. We'll go up to our body. This is the sky right here. This is the thing that we're changing. So if I made this pink, you can see that's what we want to affect. So we'll add our animation name, which was cycle sky colors. Colors or color? Okay, colors. And then we need to do a couple of other things. Animation duration. How long should it take? Let's say 5 seconds to start. And as soon as I save, you can see it runs, but of course it only runs one time and then we're done. So let's change that to animation iteration count infinite. And let's just add animation delay 0, which we don't have to be explicit about, but it's better to do that. Okay, so it keeps running. Now, if we pay attention to this, you'll see that, another thing that we could do before I forget is add animation timing function, and let's make that linear so that we have the same transitions between all of them. So let's start off. Okay, it goes black very quick to pink, and then it transitions to blue, and then a long transition to pink. But if I change the order here, instead of doing 50%, it should be blue. If I instead say at 30% and 70%, we want it to go back to blue. You'll see now that it stays blue for a long while in the middle and then goes back to pink. Hopefully you can see that difference on the video. If not, if you care, play around with your own values or rewind and you'll definitely notice it. So now let's focus on the sun. So the specifics of the exact path you have the sun take, the exact shades of color don't matter. Really what I want to see is that you have a sun starting roughly in the bottom left, ends in the bottom right, and it goes up at some point and comes back down. Now the angles and everything doesn't matter. Maybe you wanted to make it a nicer arc. This is not really that accurate for how the sun actually moves. But the keyframes that I defined, the percentages are 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100%. And we'll start by getting it to move. We'll ignore the color until the end. So to move, what we're going to do, we have a couple options, but the one we'll use is transform, translate. That's the best, the most optimal way to move an item on the page as far as the browser rendering process, as I explained in a previous video. So we'll hop over to CodePen again, and the first thing we'll do is define that animation. So keyframes, let's call it Sun Motion. Sort of sounds like a startup name or something, Sun Motion. So we have that in there, and the next thing that we'll do is, let's start with just 0% and then 100%. So the start and the finish, we'll have it move across the screen on the x-axis. So at 0%, we'll do transform, translate, let's do 0 pixels, comma, 0 pixels. We'll have it start where it is. But then at 100%, we'll have it move over to the right part of the screen. And this number will depend on your screen and basically the computer you're using. So I'm going to do 1920 pixels. It doesn't really matter what you do. Do something, experiment with a number that works best, but don't spend too much time. So we have that defined. Now we need to go and assign that animation to the sun selector. Sun motion, and then we'll add in a duration, make it match what we have for the sky, which is 5 seconds. And if we hit save, you'll see it starts moving. Now it only goes once. Let's be explicit and add in animation iteration count, which should be infinite. And we'll also add an animation timing function, which should be linear for us. Okay, so we have the sun moving across the screen. And it keeps going. If I zoom out, you can actually see how far. It goes all the way to the edge of the screen. And then wraps around. There's a couple of things that are different, though, than the solution. If you look here, and let me zoom out to 100%, you'll see that the sun actually sets below the grass. So that's something to consider. We'll come back to that. Let's now focus on the 25, 50, and 75% frames. So we'll go back and define those. Zoom back in so you can read this a bit better. Here we go. So we'll add our 25%, our 50%, and our 75%. And inside of them, we'll be doing a transform translate. So I'll copy that, but we're going to have different numbers, of course. So the numbers that I have personally for this first one, we're going to go to 330 pixels at 25%, followed by 0 pixels Y. And then we'll go to 860 for our halfway point. And we're also going to go negative 50 on the y-axis, which will make it rise up and get cut off a little bit by the top of the page, which is a choice that I made. I want it to continue to move upwards. Then we have 75%, which we'll have, instead of 1920, we have 1390 pixels, 0 pixels on the y-axis. So if I save and I zoom out, you'll see that I have a rough arc, but it's not quite there based off of the start and end. It kind of starts setting and then it flattens out. So to fix that, I will translate 200 pixels down on the y-axis at the beginning, so it rises from below, and it will also end 200 pixels below. And if I zoom out to 100%, and if you take a look, it's close, but there's still a problem over here where the starting position of the sun is already on screen on the x coordinate as well. So if you can see, it starts about over here, not in the corner. So we can change that by just shifting it minus 200 pixels to the left. And now, as you'll see, it starts rising from the corner and setting in the corner. But like I said in the assignment video, I did not want you to get hung up on the exact coordinates. It can be frustrating. What's more important is that you just have it going up and down. It could be rising here and setting here for all I care. So the last thing is the color. So if we go back to our guide, it should be orange here, and then change to yellow at 25%, and then yellow and yellow for 50 and 75, and change to red or orange red at 100%. So we can do that very easily. All we want to say is at 0%, background color should be orange, and then at 25%, should change to yellow, And then at 100%, we want it to go back. Well, not go back, but we want to make it red. This is close, but you'll see that it's yellow, and then it starts changing to red the entire way down, basically between 25 and 100. We don't want that, so we're going to duplicate background color yellow at 75%. So it should stay yellow from 25 to 75, as you can see. And now it starts transitioning. Perfect. So let me slow everything down so we can just take a closer look. 10 seconds. And also this one should be at 10 seconds. They start at the same time. There's no delay. And now you can see that it goes pink for a bit. The sky stays blue for a long time, as does the sun with yellow. And then they both transition to sunset colors. The sun sets and it starts over. So we have two animations going with two different sets of intervals. We're doing quarters over here, even quarters. And here we're working with 0, 10, 30, 70, and so on. Now, if you do care about the exact hexadecimal codes that I used, you can come over here and look at them inside of the code pen. Basically, I just used typical flat UI colors. Instead of doing the default CSS blue or yellow, I use these hexadecimal codes. So if you want, look at the solution that I've posted, and you can use those exact colors if you care. All right, so that wraps up the exercise. Hopefully you were able to see how easy it is to actually get a keyframe animation working, maybe how frustrating it can be to deal with animating translations, transformations, dealing with pixels and coordinates and all of that. Either way, hopefully you had a good experience. All right, that wraps it up.